Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. We've been grinding the mock drafts. We are finally getting into our position ranks. First video on it, starting with the quarterbacks. We got our top five. We'll probably do another video on 6 through 10. But again, before we get into it, I just want to say thank you to you guys. Talking prospects is probably the best part of the NFL draft, and the support you guys have shown truly means a lot. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, let us know if we're sleeping on any players. We love talking ball with you guys in the comment section as well. Boys, looking at this quarterback class, at least getting into it, there are a lot of guys. I think there's a clear 1 through 3 in my mind. Dale, I know you might disagree, and we'll get to that. That being said, I feel like there's a lot of guys that there's a big drop-off. And you see that drop-off because a lot of these guys are electing to stay in college for another year because of NIL. Bo Nix, Michael Penix, those guys would be probably top 5 quarterbacks in the draft, day 2 picks, but they're getting it back to stay in college for one more year, potentially improve their stock. And you're seeing this quarterback class, who the quarterbacks who are really making money and are good players, they're getting all the NIL money. They're staying in school for another year.
Yeah, I mean, that's changing the game huge for those premier skill positions, quarterback, running back, wideout. Those guys, I mean, when you're like the catching all those touchdowns and putting up those stats, you can easily get your name out there. You can be very marketable. And again, like just to echo what you said, like a guy like Blake Corum without NIL, no shot he's back at Michigan. In with all those quarterbacks you mentioned, that it's changing the game. It's going to be interesting to see how extreme maybe it gets, because right now the guys who were going to go went. I mean, CJ Stroud didn't come back, for example. So like the real top of the end isn't moving yet, but
yeah, because you're making too much money. If you're a top 10 pick, the NIL money doesn't even compare to what you're getting paid. All right, let's get into the prospects. Boys, all three of us have Bryce Young, number 1 overall. For me, I think it was just easy. Like, you obviously have concerns about the height and weight, but when you turn on the film, like easily the best quarterback in college football. The ability to extend plays with his legs. He's a very good athlete for not being big. He's very, very good. He's very accurate with the football, and when you watch his film, he's got it. I don't know necessarily what it is, but he's got it. That Alabama offense, I felt, was so poorly operated. He did not have a great offense line. The pass catchers were horrible. And when Alabama had success, which they still had a lot of success this season, it was because Bryce Young was the best player on the football field.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head there, Jay. Not much more to say besides that. He is my number 1 quarterback, top 10 prospect, obviously, in this class. I think that the one thing that you do see with him is his ability to kind of throttle the speed of his throws, making life easier for receivers. You also look at him and you can just see him and picture him as like the face of a franchise, kind of cool, calm, collective, makes fourth quarter comebacks look easy. It's just easy to project him into the NFL, but obviously size concerns. I don't worry about that at all. I think the NFL protects quarterbacks quite well right now. So quarterback 1 for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you too. I do think people, I don't know, as good as Bryce Young is, I think CJ Stroud is really good. I mean, when you get to number 2, I don't think there's like this mile of distance. I think the distance between 3 is much bigger than it is between 1 and 2. I mean, CJ Stroud, I don't know. I think people just get like maybe a little bored. Like, he does make things look so easy out there. He doesn't miss throws.
It's easy because he's sitting behind such a okay. Here's my take on it, and I get, like, I feel like Will Levis, you disrespect him so much. I think there's a bigger gap between where Bryce Young is and CJ Stroud, and a smaller gap between Stroud and Levis. CJ Stroud sitting behind 2 tackles that one's going to go first round, the other's going to go day 2. He's throwing to elite wide receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr., probably the best wide receiver in the game. And last year, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. It looks easy because he's in a phenomenal offense surrounded by phenomenal talent. And that's the same question that you have with a lot of former Ohio State quarterbacks. And how can that translate into the NFL where the situation isn't always perfect?
But when he needed to, he could go down and sort of reach deep. I mean, you saw it against Michigan in 21. And I know they didn't win that game, but he did everything he could for that team. I mean, he made that throw to Jackson Smith-Njigba on like 3rd and a mile after they gave up like a sack and then a 5-yard loss in a run play. That's a huge play. That play that they called back a hold where he, again, a rushing touchdown. And then against Georgia this year, he was doing the same thing without Marvin Harrison. And when it got really hard, he was that guy. And he showed that. I think he showed he has that in him. just because he didn't have to pull it out constantly. I mean, yeah, so what? He's sick. Like when things are going well, he's going to torch teams. But I think he's got that in him to make those plays when he needs to. He's shown it when he has had to.
Yeah,
Rock, break the ice here.
No, I agree with Dill here. I think that at least CJ Stroud kind of shows that he can do it. Like, okay, he does have the great weapons in the offensive line, the team around him, the great coaching. But, I mean, you look at a Will Levis, of course, he doesn't have the team surrounding him, but he hasn't really shown much consistency. No matter whether it was with Penn State, whether it was with Kentucky. He tried to step up in the SEC. I mean, his games aren't that impressive. They'll make some splash throws. NFL teams will love that. But at the end of the day, I'd rather take some sure things. I know CJ Stroud can do it. Maybe he might need some help on the outside. I know Bryce Young can do it. I think the question mark kind of lays right after those two with Levis, with a Anthony Richardson, a Hendon Hooker. It's just easy for me to look at the other two.
So that could be a question of, like, does it matter where CJ Stroud lands? Like, if he lands number 2 to Houston, where he's not going to have that much help at the wide receiver position, one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the country or in the league. What if he lands at Carolina, where you're starting to see some bones of, like, Icky looks good at tackle. You obviously have more Terrace Marshall. Like, maybe there's just better landing spots for CJ Stroud, because I do agree. I have CJ Stroud as my quarterback too. I just don't think it's that far away from Will Levis, because I think if you put Will Levis on that Ohio State offense, I think he'd be looking very similar to what CJ Stroud.
Will Levis doesn't play a very clean game of football. Like, you can talk about his weapons and all that, but still, when there's throws there, he will miss them. He will throw high, not consistently, but consistent enough where you're concerned. And I mean, the pocket presence I thought was quite not great, because their offensive line wasn't phenomenal.
Horrible.
But he like would lose his bearings a fair amount and just kind of panic. And at the end of the day, you just can't do that no matter what. I mean, you saw when the pocket broke down for CJ Stroud against teams like Georgia, he was able to manage it. I don't know. There's things about Will Levis's game. I just don't think again, he's 20, he's old now, like 2 or 3 years older than CJ Stroud, and you don't see the same maturity and development that you do with CJ.
I will say, CJ Stroud, I was very close to bumping up Will Levis. CJ Stroud's game against Georgia, and I don't know if I'm putting too much stock into one game, but the one question mark you had with Stroud was his ability to create outside of structure when it wasn't always perfect, when he wasn't throwing from a clean pocket. Because you look at, I mean, I don't want to just reference PFF, but one of the worst grades in the country throwing under pressure, CJ Stroud, like, not very good. And when he had to create and when it didn't always look as pretty, CJ Stroud stepped up against Georgia. And that was something that I think a lot of scouts wanted to see, because when you look at CJ Stroud's most of his film, it's beautiful. And he's on time with throws. He's very, very accurate, but he never was really pushed. He was pushed against Georgia, and he made it happen. And that's kind of why I solidified him at that quarterback 2 spot. But again, Will Levis, I think we need to prepare ourselves mentally for Will Levis to potentially go 1, because NFL teams will love the trades.
No, there's no way he's going to go.
That's crazy. Jay, I do think you do make a good point with the maybe Levis over Stroud in draft order. I think right now for me, it's easy to say that Stroud's a better prospect. But in terms of fit, I don't know if maybe Houston feels comfortable throwing him into a position where he has no weapons. I mean, they have a Mechie. Cooks is probably gone. Maybe giving Levis someone who's more comfortable making plays outside the pocket, who has a rocket arm or a better arm than Stroud, is a better position for him. So I wouldn't count that out. But number 1, I just can't see.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the Colts love him, so we'll see about that. But again, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis. Number 4, I have Anthony Richardson, and this is like a pure, like, I put a lot of value into Will Levis's traits. Anthony Richardson, it's pure traits, because when you turn on the film, talk about inconsistent. I mean, he had a good offensive line. Like, he had pockets. He would just miss throws. That almost just left you, like, scratching your head. Now, a lot of comps go Will Levis is Josh Allen. If you're looking for Josh Allen, I think it's a lot closer to Anthony Richardson. Like, in terms of how athletic he can be outside the pocket, probably even more athletic than Josh Allen. This dude is a weapon running the football. But the inconsistencies, like, you look at what he did throwing the football, even from clean pockets, it was ugly. In his last year, he didn't even complete over 60% of his balls. I mean, he was grossly inaccurate, and the inconsistencies are there. He's the definition of a project.
Yeah, I agree. And you do look at his weapons at wide receiver. He didn't have much. I thought he definitely should have stayed in school for one more year.
Same.
But yeah, I think that the traits are there, the arm's there. He can create plays outside the pocket. He can obviously be used as a runner by himself. So it's intriguing for some teams, but I wouldn't want to risk it inside the top 10. I think there's just better prospects. But if you're looking like for a team that's trying to replace a quarterback maybe a year or two in the future.
I like Detroit Lions at 18, where it's like, okay, we can rock with Jared Goff, and then a couple of years, Anthony Richardson, like he has the capability of being a Pro Bowler. Like
what about even like a Green Bay Packers where, I mean, you probably have Aaron Rodgers for another year, but then you just completely change the offense right after that, and it's a completely different team. So there's some enticing options in the middle of the first round that I think he'll fit right in.
Yeah, I mean, this is my issue is like I don't get like we watch Tennessee versus Florida play, and I get there's some level of talent mismatch. Tennessee was certainly better, probably had a better offensive scheme and coach. But at the end of the day, the teams were night and day difference on offense, and quarterback is the primary responsibility. It's their job to move the football, and Tennessee did that as well as anyone for the most part, with the exception of maybe against that Georgia team. But otherwise, Hendon Hooker was nails. He can run well, and not just run well, but he knows when to do it, and he'll make timely runs. And I also feel like people sleep on his arm. I mean, you saw some of the throws in the Alabama game, like on some of those comebacks. I mean, he's got a hose on him, and he hits throws. They're on time. They're in stride. They make big plays. I don't get why people like want to dump on Hendon Hooker so bad. It feels like in the draft world, because I feel like the common thing is, oh, he was just in a good offense. Well, like, you don't think he had something to do with that offense being really good because he was the main driver of it?
Well, Joe Milton, who sucks, came in and made that offense look pretty dang good in the Orange Bowl.
I mean, like, but we
Joe
saw
Milton things.
But like I don't know, even that, it's like, who knows? Like, that's why quarterbacks make double what the next closest position group makes, because they're the most important players. And to me, Hendon Hooker was the guy for that team, and they moved with him. And when he came in for Joe Milton last year is when that offense really turned around and started clicking on all cylinders. I don't know. You guys just like, not just you guys, but everybody. I feel like you just like refuse to watch the games and with any, oh, this guy's kind of open and this guy.
So this comes down to, before I take you right off your soapbox here, like watch the film. Like this comes down to, I think you much more than Rock and I value what you see on the film, the current player.
Yes.
A lot of GMs and coaches, they look at what the player can be. And that's why you're seeing Anthony Richardson be mocked, be evaluated as a better prospect, because you use the word prospects for a reason. We're not saying Anthony Richardson is going to come in year one and be a dog. Hendon Hooker, it seems like he's relatively capped. He's 25 years old. I mean, he's older than most of these like young quarterbacks in the league who are making it to AFC Championship games. And yes, I think you make a very good point where you look at what Hendon Hooker's done on the football field. Last year, 31 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. This year, 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Like, extremely impressive. He's very, very accurate. But how high is the ceiling with this dude? Can he be an all-pro kind of Super Bowl champion quarterback? I don't know.
I don't know about that, but we're not talking about a pure like all-pro in Anthony Richardson either. So it's like, do I think, like, would I take a guy? I'm trying to think. Maybe Justin Herbert or something. Is he ever going to be an all-pro? Maybe not at this point in his career. Maybe he will. I don't know. I mean, right now he's around 8 in the league.
Yeah.
If that's where I think Hendon Hooker can be, and I think there's a better chance he's there or enough of a better chance he's there than a guy like Anthony Richardson will be an all-pro, you take Hendon Hooker. I mean, you don't just play the lottery.
The way the NFL is going right now, especially in the past couple of years, they kind of throw quarterbacks in right away, whether they're ready or they're not. So, I mean, if you're looking at a Hendon Hooker, I think he's pretty much the opposite as a Richardson, where he kind of makes the easy throws look easy, where Richardson kind of makes the easy throws look really, really difficult. So, but yeah, as a prospect, I think Hooker makes those kind of like moon throws like Russell Wilson once did. Has a good arm. Again, he protects the ball. Not many interceptions. He's accurate. So I could see where a Hooker looks more enticing than a Richardson. But again, prospects, like you said, Jay, you kind of have to project a little bit.
I mean, what about for like the Eagles? I mean, Jalen Hurts, do I think he'll ever be the best quarterback in the league? No, but he's ultra effective. He doesn't turn the ball over. He runs when he needs to. And he's winning them a lot of games, and yeah, that team's good around him, obviously. But I mean, he did come in and give them something they didn't have.
I think also where these guys land matters just as much as their place now, because even like a Brock Purdy, like you said, Jalen Hurts, I don't think they're. I mean, Jalen's obviously better than Purdy, but neither are elite at anything. I think they're like Hurts is a good runner. Purdy's kind of just like a field general. But yeah, the situation matters so much. So it's tough to even say, oh, this person or this prospect's better than this prospect. When they get in the NFL, it could be totally different.
And the discussion between Hooker and Anthony Richardson it's like a lotto ticket. It's like, do you want to take the lotto ticket, or do you want to take the $10? You know you're going to have a solid quarterback with Hendon Hooker. He showed it over the last couple of years. Anthony Richardson's like, do you want the lottery ticket? I mean, this guy could be one of the best quarterbacks in the whole entire league in a couple of years. But he does need to sit the bench, and he does need to develop because, again, Rock, like you said, he makes everything look so dang hard from the pocket. Like easy crossing routes. And I do agree. I think you make a really good point. The wide receiver play was not there for Florida. You go back and watch the Florida State film, multiple drops in the second half, and all the commentary was like, you're always 0 for his last 11. Like 5 of them were drops. Like the 5 of them were plays that wide receivers need to make, and the Gators just weren't making it for him. I wish he stayed in school one more year and kind of showed that, hey, I'm getting better, because this guy's like could be a bona fide top 5 pick, but right now it's just a whole lot of projection. Want to get to some bubble guys. Dill, actually, what is your top 5 looking like? Because I don't think you had AR in your top 5.
No, I think I'm sitting there very close between Jaron Hall and Tanner McKee at 5. Like those two right there for me are it's hard to split the difference and just like brush on Tanner McKee. He's like a guy who, when things were good around him, he was almost perfect. But then whenever anything like remotely bad happened, whenever there was a moderate amount of pressure, he was taking sacks, he was fumbling, he was tripping over himself trying to hand the ball off, or not getting 4th and 1 on QB sneaks. Like just the plays that don't win you games. And I think ultimately that showed up in how little Stanford scored. But one thing you do look at is when he had a clean pocket, he threw the ball incredibly well.
He's a deadeye. He's so accurate with the football. Like when he has a clean pocket and can step up, he is extremely accurate. And there's a reason he was getting mocked in the top 15 coming into the season. And Tanner McKee is my next prospect as well. And again, he's limited athletically. Like
you got to move the football too. At the end of the day, it's like that team couldn't score, and he's primarily responsible for that at the end of the day.
Yeah, Rock. If you had to give like an outside top 5, like diamond in the rough here, where are you going?
It's so tough.
It's ugly.
I mean, I would have
said
you
need to watch Jaron Hall. Sorry for interrupting, but
I would have said Cam Ward, but he's returning, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, haven't been able to look that far in. I have looked at Tanner McKee. No one who really jumps out at this moment. But going back to McKee, I think that he does have the arm. We did see him mocked in the first round by Mike Renner, the last video we did.
Yes.
I think it's a little steep. But yeah, like the frame's there, the arm's there. If you really want to, I could see him putting him over an Anthony Richardson. So yeah, I don't have much outside top 5 right now.
He's much more polished than Anthony Richardson. I mean, Anthony Richardson's got zero polish on him. I'll give you one of my sleepers, and this isn't a guy that I'm necessarily like saying he's in my top 5 or even Clay. I think he's quarterback 8 for me right now. Clayton Tune from Houston. If you're looking for a solid guy to come in and just be a solid quarterback too, and maybe develop into a starter, it's Clayton Tune. I mean, this guy is a very accurate with the football. He's been very productive for the last 2 years. 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions in 2021, 40 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He's going to the Senior Bowl. I mean, he's a guy that I don't think a lot of people are talking about as just a very, very solid quarterback prospect late in rounds that I think teams could be taking swings on. And again, it gets to the point that we made early. After some of those top, in my mind, top 3 guys who I think could be very good quarterbacks, and then you throw in Anthony Richardson and Hendon Hooker, it's kind of a wasteland. There's not a lot of good quarterback prospects after that top 5.
If you want to go watch some D2 football, you can watch Tyson Bagent from
I haven't seen him yet, but
that's fun. I mean, if you want to talk about sleeper, that's the ultimate sleeper right there. So
he's going to the Senior Bowl. So 6'3", 210. I'm excited to see what he's a guy that needs the Senior Bowl. You gotta show it against the top dog. So
yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Rock, I want to give you a chance to talk about one of your pet cats, DTR here, because I know you do like them. I'm gonna give you the floor. I'll probably throw up in my mouth, but let's hear it.
No, I mean, if we're talking about someone who has the dog in them, right? I say this all the time with cornerbacks, with quarterbacks, it matters just as much. I think I watched his tape and I watched Will Levis right after, and I think there's some similarities there, right? I think they both have a live arm. I think they're both mobile quarterbacks. I think DTR is a little bit more mobile.
Yes.
But what really excites me is just his progression throughout his years within UCLA. I think he got better every single year. No reason to think he couldn't get even better in the NFL, depending on the scheme that he's in. Again, going back to the fit, it matters just as much as the talent. So I don't know. I saw him. I saw the emotion he plays with. I got excited at first. I put him over Will Levis. I watched a little bit more. I'm like, okay, I'm calming down a little bit. The accuracy isn't always there, but again, just going back to that progression throughout his couple years within UCLA is very exciting.
Okay, so I'm not a DTR fan by any means. That being said, you do make a good point. Like, this guy's talented. Was a former top 40 prospect coming out of the 2018 class. And I do love when you see quarterbacks just make the consistent, steady improvement. And and that's one thing you're concerned about with Will Levis, just because he was like very good in 2021, and then 2022 he was not good and didn't really make that progression. DTR is a guy that you make a very, very good point in, especially in terms of his pocket passing. Better and better. He was a guy that relied mostly on the athleticism. The last 2 years just really improved as a passer inside the pocket. Again, I think he's a day 3 guy that you're bringing in to not be a starter year 1, maybe year 2 or year 3, but he's a guy that can win you some football games if you need it late in the season.
But he is also like, he's a dog. Like that USC game, that's as gritty a top of a performance I think as anyone's ever seen in their lives. I mean, it looked like his fingers were all messed up and he was getting hammered and the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed, and he just kept swinging. And it was unfortunate he did end the game with a pick, but I mean, he did everything he could in that game, and his team did nothing for him. I didn't think the receivers played well. I didn't think the line played well. He just willed them to like 45 points and narrowly a win.
I'll give you, if we're doing Rock Boy dogs, Will Levis.
We gotta have a video about that. Some
just absolute dogs. Like, Will Levis played with turf toe and a shoulder injury most of the year, and then Jake Haener, I'm pretty sure, played with like broken ribs. Like, there are some absolute dogs at this quarterback class who are just tough dudes who you want to bring in and just see what they can do. Again, didn't want to run up on 30 minutes. We appreciate you guys. That is our top 5 quarterback. Again, let us know who we're sleeping on. Let us know who needs to be in the top 5. Tell Dilly he's an idiot for having Anthony Richardson outside of his top 5. We appreciate you guys checking us out as usual. Consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy the content. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.